Welcome to the Vital Spirit podcast. I'm Dr. Kelly Livingston, a naturopathic physician and your guide to a new health reality, one that connects body, mind, and spirit. Together, we'll dive deep into the art and science of holistic healing. Through working with hundreds of women through midlife transitions, I've discovered something profound. Most of our physical and emotional challenges are rooted in a maladaptive stress response. And true healing begins when we regulate our nervous system. Each episode will explore complex health topics in simple, empowering ways, uncover the deeper wisdom within each of us, and share practical tools for nervous system regulation to help you awaken your vital force and create lasting wellness. So, if you're ready to reconnect with yourself, your health, and your purpose, let's begin this journey together so you can experience life more fully human and deeply healed. Hi, and welcome back to the Vital Spirit podcast. I'm Dr. Kelly Livingston, and today we've arrived at Pillar 4 of the Vital Spirit method, Rebalanced and Resilient, where we work on hair, skin, nails, and spirit. This is the final phase of my signature healing method, and it's a time when the body is integrating all of the shifts from the previous phases and when true radiance begins to emerge. From the outside, yes, because many women do come to me with physical symptoms and their chief complaints might be things like hair loss or a new skin condition, but most powerfully, radiance begins to emerge from within. You see, this is about more than skin deep beauty. It's about soul deep radiance. I want to share a quote from Marion Woodman, and I highly recommend that you go and read some of her books, or at the very least, look up some of the work that her legacy really has left for women. So the quote goes like this. Many people are being dragged toward wholeness in their daily lives, but because they do not understand initiation rites, they cannot make sense of what is happening to them. They are being presented with the possibility of rebirth into a different life. Through failures, symptoms, inferiority feelings, and overwhelming problems, they are being prodded to renounce life attachments that have become redundant. The possibility of rebirth constellates with the breakdown of what has gone before. But because they do not understand, people cling to the familiar, refuse to make the necessary sacrifices, resist their own growth. Unable to give up their habitual lives, they are unable to receive new life. Unless cultural rituals support the leap from one level of consciousness to another, there are no containing walls within which the process can happen. Without an understanding of myth or religion, without an understanding of the relationship between destruction and creation, death and rebirth, the individual suffers the mysteries of life as meaningless mayhem alone. And that's from Marion Woodman, The Pregnant Virgin. And I have been working with women through perimenopause and menopause over the last 12 years in my practice. And I really do find that many women might arrive at midlife focused on what's changing on the outside, right? That might be the first thing that they see or that grabs their attention. And that might be changing skin, changing weight, changing hair, changing energy, right? And understandably, they want to look and feel their best, as do I. But what they don't realize yet is that these physical symptoms are the doorway to a much deeper initiation. They can actually be a portal to transformation. And this transformation really asks for spiritual rebirth, but that requires going much deeper within than we sometimes anticipated when we just came in to ask why our hair was shedding, right? It is an initiation that invites women into their truest self. I call this a radical acknowledgement. And in the 12th module of my group program, we work on something that I call somatic embodiment of this. So yes, we begin this phase with the visible, hair, skin, and nails, and we move toward the invisible, your vis, your spirit, your soul wisdom. So let's talk about this physical reflection. Before we go deep into spirit, we must honor the physical layer, right? We walk around in our physical body. That's how we engage with the world. And because perimenopause and menopause do bring changes that deserve attention, I want to make sure that we start here. And this is really where naturopathic medicine can shine. So let's talk a little bit about the hormonal shifts that create physical changes. So we've talked before about how estrogen and progesterone are fluctuating, and this can affect skin moisture and elasticity. It's going to affect vaginal tissues. Low estrogen is going to mean that you might experience dryness, dullness, and that lack of elasticity. Definitely, many women will come see me and they're looking to age more gracefully, right? And then thyroid health. So, one of the root causes that might be going on when a woman comes to see me with hair loss as a complaint can be a thyroid issue. And so, Hashimoto's is actually one of the most common causes of hair loss in perimenopause. And typically, I've ruled this out in pillar 1. So, if you've listened through all of the episodes, you might be aware of that. And if not, you can go back and listen to those. But definitely check on whether or not, if you have a low thyroid, it's Hashimoto's or not. So that would mean, is it autoimmune or not? Very often patients have been told, oh, you need thyroid medication if it is diagnosed and a full thyroid panel is run, but they're not told if it's autoimmune or Hashimoto's in nature. And that would change how I might treat that. So it's an important piece of the puzzle for me as a naturopath. And then iron and ferritin. So, if you are experiencing hair loss or dry skin, definitely low energy, you do want to look into iron deficiency anemia, and you do want to make sure that you run a ferritin panel. These are huge causes of hair shedding. I see it all the time in my practice. And as I mentioned, autoimmunity. So things like psoriasis, eczema, alopecia, rosacea have autoimmune roots, and gut healing is going to be really key here. Again, we covered that in the first pillars. And then next, I might consider histamine issues in a woman when they first come see me. They might be getting really itchy, they might be getting hives. I see a lot of patients with something called mast cell activation syndrome. So a lot of times they can't tolerate high histamine foods, or they're noticing that they have a lot of anxiety, can't drop into their body. Histamine is an excitatory neurotransmitter, and histamine is increased by estrogen. So if women have some estrogen dominance or estrogen fluctuations going on, it can make these histamine issues worse. And that might come out in what seems like a skin issue, but it's really something deeper than that. And nutrient deficiencies as well. So, again, if a patient is coming in looking to optimize hair, skin, and nails, then I'm going to look at any nutrient deficiencies they might have going on. Most commonly in perimenopause and menopause for women, I see that we're not getting enough protein. Often we're not getting enough omega fatty acids. So, that's something that I'll test for in blood work. And very commonly, antioxidants will be deficient, or minerals and elements that I'll test for. And these will contribute to healthy hair, skin, and nails. Now, I can't not mention the gut skin axis. So, again, if you've been following along, you would know that we likely have addressed dysbiosis, candida, leaky gut, maybe SIBO in previous pillars. And typically, skin conditions like acne and rosacea, even if they come up for the first time ever through perimenopause and menopause, are gut driven. Even if they've been something that you've struggled with your whole life, they're typically gut driven. So, really, you can't underestimate the power of diet and lifestyle when it comes to the external manifestations of hair, skin, and nail beauty through perimenopause and menopause. So, one of the things that I talk to a lot of patients about are the ages. So, I had a mentor, Dr. Z, at the University of Bridgeport, and he used to always say, the ages age you. So, these are advanced glycation end products. And these are in things like high sugar diets, right? And so these are going to age you faster. This is the opposite of antioxidants. So making sure that you're reducing all those inflammatory foods that we talked about in the first pillars is key to aging with healthy hair, skin, and nails. And getting adequate sleep is really, really important. When we're not getting enough sleep, we're going to decrease our collagen production and repair. So making sure that we're focusing on all of those seeds of health that we talked about in episode 7, right? And really reducing inflammation. So most physical hair, skin, and nail complaints that patients might have do have some relationship with inflammation throughout the body or locally. So reducing inflammation is typically going to help with most of those. And we really anchor our healing in food as medicine and making sure we're getting enough of that protein, getting wonderful things like collagen and bone broth if we're not vegan, getting our healthy omegas, our antioxidants from phytonutrients, right? So eating the rainbow. These are all strategies that I typically have already addressed. And so today as we move on to other aspects of this pillar, just know that you can go back and learn more about those in previous episodes. So, what happens when all your labs are normal? Let's have some magical unicorn hypothetical perimenopausal patient who has nothing to find in her physical workup. Okay. Well, that's when we enter the energetic and spiritual realm of healing. And that's one of the things that I love the most about my career is that it does focus on mind, body, and spirit. So I am always learning, I'm always growing, and I feel like there's always something that we can work on with patients because menopause is not a disease, it's an alchemical transformation. So, yes, menopause is a biochemical event. Hormones are changing, things are changing in our body, right? But it's also a transformation of the psyche. And when we focus solely on the symptoms, when we focus solely on how bad our hot flashes are going to be because our moms were, we really lose sight of that. And it is truly a chance to birth who we really are. Who am I? What does my soul need me to express? What is my sacred contract? If I hit the wall with a patient in the physical realm, I am absolutely digging deeper and asking more questions about what some of those physical manifestations might really mean or what their soul might be trying to tell them. You see, midlife is meant to be a spiritual initiation, but our culture, and by culture, I mean United States of America society in particular, we've really lost these rituals. We've lost women's circles, the elder wisdom. I'm so grateful for some of the elders that I worked with through naturopathic medical school, whether it's my mentors in homeopathy or herbal medicine, mind, body, and counseling. But the reality is that not every woman is given that opportunity. And even when preteens and teens are going through their first period, we are not initiating or teaching women these rituals and traditions anymore. So the sad truth is that we end up with a lot of women who are spiritually starved, overwhelmed, anxious, and clinging to perfectionism, trying to fit into a mold, right? To accomplish things, to have external validation, because no one has told them that this phase is a sacred portal. And so it is some might refer to it as a death portal. And these are transformations and initiations that we go through many times in life. So, from maiden to mother is one, when we get married, right? Becoming a parent. And now through perimenopause and menopause, we're moving through to queen, sage, crone, witch, wise woman, right? And yes, I said witch, the healer, the priestess, the one who lives in deep, deep relationship with nature and her inner knowing. But no one has told us these stories. We've really lost touch with myth and therefore with the rituals that teach us this transformation. As I talked about in the last episode, I often work with women on shadow work and on archetypal patterning in their life. And I often find that the shadow is our power, but we're very often afraid of this strength. We're afraid of it sometimes because it also comes with responsibility, and we're typically at a phase in life where we might feel burdened. We already have a lot of responsibilities. So taking on this power doesn't always sound like a step that we're really excited about. Women can often begin to feel panic or rage or grief come up during perimenopause, and they immediately will think it's a chemical imbalance, it's my hormones, or it's my neurotransmitters. Now, remember, I talked about that in the last episode. Sometimes it is, but also sometimes it's a sign from the soul. Hot flashes, anger, skin eruptions, anxiety. yes, these can be physical symptoms and they can have physical root causes that we rule out or we address, but they can also be messages from the psyche asking you to listen, to feel, and to reclaim yourself. Maybe you suppressed anger from when you were a young child, and perimenopause is when that anger starts to come out again. And I did a little exercise in the last episode on this where you might check in and ask where that's coming from and maybe how old you were when you first experienced it, right? So you can go back and check that out if you didn't listen. And I think that this phase of life is not about rearranging the furniture of your life, I like to say, but it is about going inward. The external things are not going to change how you feel, but if you start to do the work from the inside out, that's really where true healing comes from. This is where the perfectionism dies and the mask falls, right? This is the chrysalis. And I find that a lot of women have worn these masks and we have this outward way that we present to society. And I get it. I'm a physician. I have professional responsibilities. I'm also wearing masks, but I also am prioritizing taking time to go inward and to really identify those patterns and those shadows and to integrate them into my psyche as best I can. If this is feeling a little heavy or deep for you, or maybe it's out of your comfort zone, that's totally okay. So, to ground us a little bit, I want to share one of my favorite excerpts from a book that meant so much to me growing up, and I'm sure some of you know it, and that's The Velveteen Rabbit. Real isn't how you were made, said the skin horse. It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real. Does it hurt? Asked the rabbit. Sometimes, said the skin horse, for he was always truthful. When you are real, you don't mind being hurt. Does it happen all at once, like being wound up, he asked, or bit by bit? It doesn't happen all at once, said the skin horse. You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily, or have sharp edges, or who have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off, and your eyes drop out, and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you are real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand. And that's Marjorie Williams Bianco, The Velveteen Rabbit. I get we don't want our eyes to fall out, we don't want our skin falling off, right? But I just love that image of becoming so real that it only matters to those who don't understand. And if we go inward and we do the internal work and the loving kindness meditations and self compassion and the mirror work, right? And we love ourselves, then that is when we are real. And that is really only achievable, in my experience working with patients, when we're able to get quiet and be in stillness. So, if I'm working with a patient that can't drop into their body or they intellectualize all of their anxiety or all of their physical symptoms, it can obviously be much more difficult to do this work. And so, of course, as we work through the pillars, my goal is to get to a place where some of this soul level healing can occur. So, because this pillar is where we integrate spirit medicine and soul level healing, let's talk about some of the ways that we do that. And one, of course, is vis medicatrix naturae. And that is the acknowledgement of the healing power of nature, that inner physician, your soul wisdom. It's also your vital force, your vital spirit, your vis, right? And I do find that the way that patients can tap into that is by going out into nature to get quiet. So I do have a patient who's struggling with being at peace with the quiet, being within, right? And so she's finding it helpful if she can go and sit and look at the water at the beach, watch the waves, or sit in the forest and be with the trees. And I genuinely mean just be in silence. And so if you're not someone who can readily, easily do that without some external stimulation or attention, then I highly recommend that you get out into nature to do that. And this silence I keep talking about, right? I've very often helped patients cultivate that through the other pillars that we've worked on. And now you're going to use that time and that quiet to really tap into your inner voice. I talk a lot with patients about authenticity and vulnerability and how these are keys to transcending shame, accessing joy, and awakening true healing, all these really positive aspects of our journey, right? But it's not always easy for everyone. And a mentor of mine used to say that the patients come to be known. And I find that's really true, that patients are coming to be seen and heard and known. But the reality is I need to create a safe space for patients so that they're willing to be vulnerable and to share some of those deeper shadow truths so that we can work on them. And when we're talking about this journey toward individuation or becoming your whole self, knowing yourself, loving yourself, and surrendering to this divine plan, we're also talking about ego versus soul, right? So you can think about your ego as the shiny car that you're driving around. It's, you want to make sure the paint looks good and it doesn't get dinged up and it's really fast and everybody looks at it and it's got brand new music system, whatever it is that you like in your car, I don't know. But your soul is actually the engine that's giving your car momentum or even ability to move. And so as we go through this journey, we're more focused on the engine, on the soul than we are on the shiny red car. So again, this is really the point where the patient comes to be known, right? They might think they're coming into the office to work on hair, skin, and nails, but they're coming to be known first to themselves, then to me, and then ultimately to the inner healer within. And as a woman myself who's endured painful and powerful transitions, and as a doctor who specializes in women's health, as a seeker of truth, I know that there are many women who are not fully living out authentic lives, and it can cost them their health, their joy, and their inner peace. And because women are often dismissed, especially around some of the physical symptoms that come up through perimenopause and menopause, or told it's in their head, or they need a pill, they stop asking for help altogether. So I don't want to scare you away with all of the depth to this conversation, but I do want you to know that there is so much joy and healing on the other side because I've seen patients work through this with amazing results. And as things shift, I see women really start to trust themselves. They look in the mirror, outside and inside mirror, right? And they begin to love what they see. And this is the moment they need a healer who sees them, hears them, and reflects back their own power. Healing truly is where you place your power. So, if patients are constantly giving power to something external, including a doctor, including myself, then healing is really difficult to achieve. We're constantly filling the void. We're looking for the next doctor, or the next best treatment or pill, right? And it really is an inside job. So, this time really is not just a transformation, but it's a return to the self. So, some of the tools that you might use at home to do this would be a gratitude rock practice. That's a really simple one. So, you can just have a rock or a crystal, go to a nice, fun crystal shop and pick one up that you like and place it somewhere that you will see it every day, or put it in your pocket and carry it around with you. And every time you notice it or you feel it, you can think of something that you're grateful for. This is a great little practice to start tapping into the things that bring you joy. I also really love mirror work. You can get Louise Hay's book of the same name, Mirror Work, and that's a wonderful start. And I really like forgiveness practices. So, starting with some loving kindness, compassionate inquiry, or forgiveness practices for yourself. These are great starting points. And I like patients to start to collect what I call wonder and awe moments. So, again, most readily done out in nature where you're looking around and awe of the beauty and wonder of it all, connecting to something bigger than yourself, something outside of yourself, which again, culturally, we're lacking in, I find. And if you're interested in going more in depth and looking at your archetypal patterns, essentially what you can do is you can even pick up Sacred Contracts by Carolyn Mace, and you can start going through the different archetypal patterns that you've exhibited throughout your life. So as you look at behaviors or patterns or choices you've made throughout life, roles you've played, identities you've had, you can start to identify some of those shadow sides and some of those light sides that you want to cultivate. And so I'll read one line from this wonderful book, Sacred Contracts. Knowing your sacred contract allows you to see how apparently random events and encounters, whether positive or negative, are actually part of a life script that provides you with countless opportunities for spiritual transformation. So, as you identify patterns like the healer or the mother or the addict, you can start to rewrite your script. This pillar is really where your healing journey begins and takes off, even though maybe it seems like we worked through a lot, but you've cleared your brain fog, you're no longer bloated, you've tended to your gut health, you've balanced your hormones and neurotransmitters, you've got lots of energy, your nervous system is regulated, and now you get to step into radiance. And this final pillar is really where healing gets embodied. It's the phase where patients come back to me and they say, Dr. Kelly, I feel calm for the first time in years. Or they say, I feel better than I've ever felt before. I'm not reacting to things the way I used to. And that can be both emotionally and physically. My skin is glowing, but it's coming from somewhere deeper. I've actually heard that from a really actually good friend now. And this is the phase where you've come to be known. You've shared yourself with me. Hopefully, I've created a safe space for you to do so. But more importantly, you've come to be known to yourself. So, I want to leave you with a question today. Do you feel vital both inside and out? And I want to share a truth from the deepest part of my being, and that's that I've had a journey as a wounded healer. And as I've healed my own trauma, I feel like I can offer healing to the collective. I feel like there was a point to it all. I don't think that we can shift the world until we shift ourselves. I don't think that I would be able to sit here confidently and authentically sharing these things with you if I haven't done work myself. And I really think that in order to change our perspective, we have to look inside, because the work of the psyche, this inner work, is where true healing begins. And by doing that work and regulating myself, I'm able to then hold space for and be a container for others to do that as well. So thank you for walking on this journey with me. I see your light, I see your power, and I honor your radiant, real, rooted self. And so I hope that if you enjoyed this episode, you subscribe and download it and you share with someone else and really reclaim your healing as sacred, powerful, and your experience as deeply human, both the light and the dark. And I'm so glad that you're here.